Can you wave it, Grandma? Stealing chickens, I got arrested.
I told you somebody's gonna get in trouble. I figured it'd be me instead.
I gotta start learning how to run faster.
All right, y'all ready? One of y'all need to volunteer to be the deputy up front, all right?
Who's the deputy?
Rest of you's chicken thieves.
I guess you're the deputy then.
No, oh, I'm the deputy? Oh, let deputy be the deputy.
I'm gonna be in the back.
Oh yeah, you gotta get in the back anyway because you're his.
Now, the Antarctic's kind of scorching. Nothing about brother.
Photo bomb.
I didn't know he was taking a picture, sorry. Oh, look at that.
Oh, this is cool.
Pretty cool. Somebody left their trash here. Don't you really like it?
Locking her in. All right, let's go have fun.
I wonder if they got the set of keys that they filed down that time.
That one open too, or no? Oh, yeah. Yep. That was Ernestine's cell.
That was Otis.
Or Otis, not Otis. Whatever.
Good, how you doing?
All right, where are we from?
Aiken, South Carolina.
Aiken.
And
Every time I hear that word, I get to hurt.
Is that Andy?
But you know where I'm originally from?
Where?
Here. And my name is Don, and all these other guys, they call me Don Lutz. And the reason they do that, because I've been here so long, they think they got me figured out. I've been doing this 15 years, and when I started doing it, there wasn't none of them back out here. I just love to tell a story about Andy's hometown and share with folks, but at the same time, have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
So when we get back, I hope you can say you've had a few laughs, but you know, we're educated on some things. And the first thing I think you'll really get a kick out of, separate from the show, it's really iconic. It's some of Andy Griffiths' terrific hometown history. It's been on the History Channel several times. It's been on Modern Marvels, but it's the world's largest, only one like it, the world's largest open face granite quarry. You might say, well, what's the big deal about that? They can see it from outer space. They've been mining since 1889, but they've only went down through it 40 to 60 feet in 134 years. Wow. And people think, well, they ain't doing anything. I said, no, that's not the story. The reason behind that, I'll share with you over the course. So we'll spend a few minutes on that. Now, we became known as the Granite City because from 1889 to 1930, when they started mining, they built homeless parks that are completely out of stone. And you don't think about looking for that when you're riding around Mount Airy, but up this street, I will point some of that out to you to give you an idea how early some of those homes were built. The church across the street looks like somebody's divine design, don't it? Nope. No, that's the best they could do in 1904. The best they could do in 1904 was blow the stone out of the quarry, drag it over here, and stick together like a jigsaw puzzle. But that absolutely turned out to have some pretty a church. But in 1905 or 6, and I've done this on my own time, researched it because ain't nothing written about it. The first precision cut stone church was in 1907 up North Main. So it was either 1905 or 6, they developed the first gang saw to cut that stone. So that's the last one built like that. We'll see one or two more jump like that, and you'll see a lot of the precision cut as we work our way up to the show. So Deputy, are you about ready?
I'm ready.
Well, let's go get somebody.
All right, now, Citizens Arrest. Where do you go, Barney? That's illegal U-turn, Citizens Arrest.
I love that crowd. crazy episode.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was saying, you can get an idea of how we became known as Grand City when you see some homes to the right there with a little bit of stone in it. Window sills and lintels. The next house, you got your foundations and your steps. Look over here to the left, how much stone's in this church. I mean, this house.
Yeah,
Those
you
two
have
were
towns
built
on
around
the roads.
1910, and they were single-family homes, but now they're mostly the apartments. The oldest one really doesn't look it, but that yellow one there was built in 1880. But you see the stonework at the steps and pillars?
Mm-hmm.
That's the clue that tells you it's at least pre-30 construction. Same way with the brick house up here to the left. All that stone inserted in that brick, that tells you how old it is. This church here, precision cut, 1910. That's actually the saw. Now you can find the stone across this Masonry name, and a few years ago, my wife and I was up in Pennsylvania, and we stopped in Commercial Corporation where they make it chocolate. Now while we were there, we realized they had built a brand new corporate headquarters building out of stone. Was we impressed? Well, not really. I mean, when you live in the Granite City, and every corner you turn, you got a granite wall up here to the left of the light where some more homes used to be. Through the light to the right, you're going to see the community building that was built out of stone. And so it's just not a big deal to leave down there and find something out of rock. But you know, we stood there a few minutes in Hershey, and I happened to look around, and there's this big old brass plaque that said the stone come from this quarry. So then I was impressed.
That's pretty cool.
And I stood there for another 2 hours. I stood there for another 2 hours like a banner rooster, and I crowed up back come. I said, "Don't forget it. Stone came in my hometown." But I think all of you will find this very, very interesting. And answer that, we'll work our way up to the Andy Griffiths story. Now, in 1960, when the Andy Griffiths show come on TV, the Ford Motor Company became their corporate sponsor. And their agreement with the show was that each season the show came back on TV, they would give them brand new patrol cars. So every year they took the old cars back in, they turned them into used cars and sold them. And before Andy died, he would have told you, as far as he knows, there are no original cars left on the face of the earth for two reasons. Back then, nobody thought about hanging on to them. The biggest reason, they were never titled to the show. And you might wonder, well, why not? Well, simply it didn't make sense to. And here's the reason. If you was going to title a vehicle to somebody knowing in the back of your mind in a few months you're going to get the thing right back, then that's a lot of title and paperwork you shouldn't have to fool with. All right, the Ford Motor Company loaned them more than 2 or 3 cars every year, so that would have been a huge hassle to fool with all that mess. So what Ford done was let them have them vehicles with an open title, no strings attached, as loaners, demonstrators. So once they got it back at the end of the season, all they had to do was strip them down and repaint them. They sold them to the public, and when they got out of sight, boom. That's when you lost your built-in traces back to the set. So all those sitting there at Wally's, he's got 6 of them, the guy that owns all of them. They're all replicas of those same cars on the show. Now, before they began mining over at the quarry in 1889, farmers used to buy and sell the property amongst themselves, supposedly to raise crops on it. That tells you there it sold a whole lot. But after you bought it, it didn't take you long to figure out you cannot grow corn on rock. So for many years, the property was so worthless to anybody in the area. There were times you could actually buy it anywhere from 15 to 35 cents an acre. Nobody had been used for in this area. But in 1889, it was 2 Englishmen, the Woodruff brothers. They bought the property, began mining, and ever since the early 1900s, it's been known as the North Carolina Granite Corporation. Now, my dad worked at the quarry from 1947 to 1977, so I was raised on it. Because back in the day, when it had hundreds of employees, they had a lot of rent houses. Well, my daddy really worked for the company, but that's no longer the case. Down through the last several generations, modern technology, computerized machinery has come into play and slowly depleted the workforce down to the point that the home's no longer necessary. So all of them's been destroyed except for one. And it's one that I grew up in. And it's built just like that church across the wall. It's in 1901 out of stone in that random fashion. Why, I don't know. And I also thought, well, maybe they're going to keep it and restore it. I found out about a month or so ago that they are planning on tearing it down. But you'll see it. You'll see the roof falling in, the windows falling in, but the stone looks like the day it was built in 1901. Now, the quarry is approximately 1 mile long and 1.5 miles wide, and we're sort of riding parallel along the length of it. Now, right around this curve at the end of the tree line, be looking over your right shoulder, you're going to see where it starts. There's no hole in the ground, there's no water, and because it's not that deep yet, and we'll work our way alongside of it. Right past the little yellow sign, said for a second because there's no traffic behind us, but they run up on this road like a racetrack. So right over your right shoulder. If you look close, you'll see this thing. Started up. In between the videos, you see the boy. And that tree line down to that stone is all in the county. So all this area has been my front yard for 72 years. Now right where they're mining, it's estimated to be between 6,000 and 8,000 feet deep. And they said that 500 years from now, if the earth is still standing, they can still be mining exactly where they're at. So I'll explain that to you when we're turning the right up here. You'll see the old home I grew up in. Yeah, they could easily gut it, burn it out, put your roof on, but no, they act like it broke.
You live there?
Yep, all 11 of us. But I appreciate it, though. We didn't have nothing.
That's actually a pretty good sized house.
Garbage man used to come by and Mama say, tell him to leave free. Right there it is. And that thing ain't changed that much since I was a kid. But now here's the history on it. They started mining up at that tree line, and it's always come down the hill at the same grade you see it laying today, and it stopped at the bottom of the hill. But after 134 years, you can see they went down 40 to 60 feet deep, cut out big old blocks of stone out of it, took it to the mills and processed it, sent it to its location. Here's why this one is shallow. All other quarries around this world are discovered on a small deposit of stone and don't have one direction, as you said. It's straight down. And, you know, you got to be careful how close you get to the perimeter of them, or things will start happening like they did in Salisbury. In Salisbury, North Carolina, there's a rare pink mine down there, and they mined that sucker forever because it was so rare, but they should have quit long before they did, because it got to a point that the walls began caving in occasionally, and the employees losing their life. And they were so compassionate. They waited until 32 people died before they closed it. Wasn't that nice of them?
Yeah, all hard.
Now, the other reason those tight quarries are closed, the deeper they get, the more water they collect, and the more difficult and expensive it is to pump water out. So finally, they give up, pull the pumps, it turns into a huge swimming hole, and they'll barricade them off. And in some cases, that's where law enforcement does not train in scuba diving. Here's the simple reason this is shallow. You've seen a lot of stone, you ain't seen nowhere near the extent of this deposit. This deposit extends out from here another 8 miles long and 4 miles wide, close to the Earth's surface. It's under my house. I don't have no basement. Got a solid granite crawl space, and you know it when you have to work on a pipe. It's on the city of Mount Airy. It's on the Wallace Service Station. It's on that tree line up there. So this is the only quarry in the entire world has the capability of strip mining back and forth, stepping it down. So that's why they could be here another 500 years. They'll always be able to see it from outer space. And another reason, it's the world's largest. And people said, I didn't know this was here. I said, I'll worry about that. People in Mount Airy don't know it's here. A lot of great information on the internet about it if you brought it up. Well, I've seen them cut stone out of this quarry for years to build bridges, highways, tombstones, countertops. A lot of curbing goes out of this quarry, especially up north to your colder states. A lot of mausoleums and memorials across the United States in honor of FDR in New York, the Dodge Brothers in Michigan, Fort Knox, 42 buildings in Washington, D.C., and off the Outer Banks of North Carolina is the Wright Brothers Memorial at Kitty Hawk. St. Louis, Missouri, all that arch out there, all that stone comes from here. And I've seen it go to a lot of states. The driver, me, neither one could recognize what it was, like Indiana, Dallas, Texas, California, Maryland, New Jersey. All around this nation, you can find this stone in some shape, form, or fashion. But when you look at it and think about other quarries, you think, well, they ain't got enough stone out of that quarry to build what's in Mount Airy. But that's the big story behind Andy's hometown.
Is this deeper? Is this bigger than Stone Mountain as far as granite?
Stone Mountain,
Georgia.
This company used to own Stone Mountain back in 1960. Daddy had to go down there and whatever, go through the information or whatever, and he was mad. And I said, what's Daddy mad at? He said, oh, he's got to go down and live out of a suitcase one night, and he don't like it. And then it became a state park. But that's the story, except for one more comment. This is where Ernest T. Bass kept his rock collection. I just wanted you to know when I was lying to you, okay? Ernest T. Speed. Now, I like to start off my presentation of the Andy Griffiths Show with Ernest T. for this reason. A long lot of people thought Ernest T was on the show a lot more than he was. He wasn't on but 5 episodes. Now it seems longer because the episodes that he was in, he took center stage. Spotlight was all about him and the problems he's caused. Plus, he played such an idiot on the show. A lot of people thought in real life the guy's got to be a little bit like that in real life. He couldn't be that good an actor, but he was probably the most highly educated guy on that show. He had a lot of degrees behind him. And behind the scenes, Howard Morris, who played Ernest T. Bass, was a writer. He was a director. He was a producer. He was George, the TV reporter, on one episode. And he was the voice for the Leonard Blush radio program on one episode. I heard it again the other night. This is Leonard Blush. And you could tell it's him. He directed some Dick Van Dyke episodes and has had one more ton of movies. So an incredible individual in the film industry throughout his career. Received a lot of awards for his work. And I've got a funny little story I'm going to share about him. And being a minute, I think you'll get a kick out of it. About some directing. But now, the show lasted from October the 3rd, 1960 till April 68, 8 years. And the first #1 character to pass away when the show went off TV was Floyd the Barber, Howard McNear. And he died early in January of 1969 from complications of strokes. And if you kept up with the series, you could see his health decline. Some people did, some people didn't. Because the first 3 seasons, he was real active on the set. Then at some point in 63, I don't know the day, he had a stroke and it paralyzed his left side to where he could never ever walk in like he did to start with. And at first, it left him in a coma. Well, what could he do but take him off the show? But now that did not sit well with Andy. Because Andy loved that man to death and the role that he plays for, he loved him to death. And so he went and talked to Howard's wife. He said, Ruth said, if he recovers to the degree I can use him on the show, would that be okay? She said, Andy, that would be an answer to prayer because they didn't make a ton of money back in those days. So he recovered from his coma. He was alert again. He could speak again, but that was it. He never was ever able to walk again like he did to start with. So when he comes back on the show, and you probably noticed him, basically, for the most part, sitting in his chair, out front of the bench, in the courthouse, in cars, in rocking chairs, for the most part. But early on, you might see him standing in some scenes, like next to his barber chair, up against the wall, moves around a little bit. He had to have some kind of assistance because that left side was so weak. But it kept getting weaker because by the 7th season, he got so weak that he started slurring more. He started having a whole lot of trouble remembering his lines. So basically, in 67, at one point, they finally had to take him off the show. But Andy sure did think the world of him, I know that. And his wife, Howard's wife, was so appreciative of Andy because there's some scenes where Otis was supposed to hurt his knee, fell down and hurt his knee. Him and that lawyer's going to sue the county. At the first of the scene, Floyd's supposed to be at the door post at the front of the courthouse, and Barney's in the back said, come on in, Floyd, and you hear footsteps, clop, 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 clop. The next scene is showing him sitting down at the desk writing. He never walked that bench, that desk. So he did a lot of that stuff right there to try to make people think he's, was all right, but he wasn't. Now the next character or actress in this case that passed away was Frances Bouvier, or Aunt Bee. And she was born and raised in New York in 1902, but she retired and settled in Siler City, North Carolina in 1974. She bought a 17-room, 5-bath mansion, sight unseen, lived there for 15 years till she died in 1989, and when she died, she left a house full of cats and a 66 Studebaker with full flat tires. Now, Frances never married. She had no family. Her cats was her family. And they said that she had a slew of cats and that she lived in one room of the house and the cats had the rest. And there's no way on the sun I am never in my lifetime going to live in a house 24 hours a day with a pile of cats. And they said when they cleaned that sucker up, they said, man, you had to go in and lift and pull the wallpaper off the wall. I'd have quit my job when I was. Recluse, and she hated Andy. And no use for Andy. And Andy said, I don't know what it was. Said she just didn't like me. And we was talking about Ernest T a while ago. Now she didn't like him either, but it wasn't the character. It was the man behind the character who was one of the many directors of the show, like Bob Sweeney, Dick Ritter, and others. When it was his turn to direct an episode, and she was going to be in, you might as well count on sparks flies. Now, shortly after she died, I happened to catch him on TV doing an interview, and he's talking about working with her. He said, I can remember one day just as clear as a bell. He said, I was directing this scene. He said, everything's going along just as smooth as silk, like it should. He said, and I'll stop for a moment. He said, now this is something I do all the time. I'm directing on the show. He said, and the only thing I done was ask her to do something different. Said she got all up in his face and jumped down his throat and said, you're just making me move because I'm fat. Said she was very argumentative and defensive, but said, you know one thing, when you was through working with her, you was working with one tremendous actress. And probably one of the most highly trained on the show because she had 25 years of Broadway under her belt, but that's what actually turned out to be what her problem was. At times during the series, she tried to marry Broadway acting with television, and that's two totally different ways of acting, and they do not mix. And it caused a lot of headaches between her and the production people behind the scenes. Now, all those stories are told not to be demeaning to her. They just do that most people thought in real life that Frances Bouvier was this sweet, dear, elderly grandmother type person, similar to who she portrayed actually on the show. Not on, I'll tell you. She was a mean-spirited old gal. Now, as you know, I don't know, you may know, but anyway, Siler City's not that far away from here. And back when I started doing these tours, you don't hear of it anymore, but I had several individuals back in the 2000s come in and share with me a personal story where supposedly they had a run-in with her. She was very unfriendly and grumpy, but I was never one that could share those stories with people. I wasn't comfortable with hearsay, so they basically went in one ear and out the other. But I'll have to admit, there is one over 12 years ago that one of the four elderly ladies, I mean elderly, not old, ancient. They come in and took a tour of me, and one of them told a story that branded my brain, and I have never been able to forget it. And every now and then it crossed my mind, and I get tickled at it. So finally, sometime back, I said, you know what? I said, some of this stuff you can't write. I said, I don't think that lady made that story up. So I share that one story with people, and just let the public figure out what they believe about it. And anyway, was riding along, and one lady in the middle of the back seat raised her finger in my mirror and said, sir, I can tell you all about that woman. Said, she was terrible. Said, see, I'm a retired registered nurse. So I went in her room one day and said, she threw a bedpan at me. And a few weeks ago, this lady in here, she raised her hand and said, I'm a registered nurse, and I can tell you, I believe every word of it. She said, I can tell you some stories about how people do. But anyway, I didn't think it sounded like it was a lie. Have y'all seen the mural of Andy? Okay, we'll turn right here and go. I go sometime, people, I done seen it. So I always ask you before we go. But somebody come about a year or so ago, and I mean, you talking about doing a heck of a job. Different stages of Andy's life. And from what I understand, they supposedly took 2 different colors of gray spray paint. One of the guys that drive the car not here today said he watched him do it. All I know is the guy's talented. And said he had things on the ground. I couldn't do it if I traced it. But right through this light, up here, we're going to turn right at the next hilltop, and on the left building, you're going to see the mural that was painted. Somebody said that place on Andy's chin, that middle one, has a dimple. I said, yeah. Couldn't miss that. That's incredible right there. And we got another one for you. You may not know who she is. From Donna Fargo. She was a singer back in the 70s.
Happiest girl in the world.
Huh?
Happiest girl in the world.
In the USA. And we'll see her. She's got one down here to dedicate to her honor. I heard one yesterday jump, grabbed her chest, turned around and used the S word. Ain't I cruel? I'm cruel. Now we're getting up on Andy's hometown main street here where he's born and raised. And you're going to see names that reflect the show, but not necessarily here when Andy grew up. Like on down the street to the left, you got Leon's, to the right. And then right around this corner, probably one of the most favorite places to eat is Barney's. Then we're going to take a left, and through the next slide after that, you're going to run across Walker's Soda Fountain and Opie's Candy Store. But all those names, they were not here as a business.
Back of a squad car before.
I was watching old Jaywalk. And anyway, the 2 days that we're here when Andy grew up, where he went to as a young boy, is the Snappy Lunch mentioned on the episode, and the barbershop next door. And the way the show was put together with all those things, before they filmed anything, all the Desaloo Studios in California, Andy came home here with some of the writers and directors of the show, and give them a 2-week tour. And during that 2-week tour is when they wrote the script of the show, based on Danny's hometown, and went back to California and filmed it. But right there's the mural of her. I seem like somebody said he got $50,000 for doing that. Pretty good, ain't it?
Uh-huh.
What are they doing?
I don't know. Noticed that a lot yesterday. People just stopped, like double park on the side.
Citizens arrest! Citizens arrest! Right over there's the barber shop. And next door is the snack room. That's where they half light bread and half burger and save on the burger. I ain't eating that. I said, well, what no difference between eating a meatloaf sandwich? People do that right there all the time. All right, now, citizens arrest. You can't park here. Citizens arrest. Hey there, little one. Now, have you folks been to the Andy Griffiths Museum?
No.
Not yet.
All right, it's up the next street. I'm going to give you a little bit of information to begin with, sort of peak entrance. And it was started by Andy's longtime best friend, whose name was Emmett Forrest, the same name used for Emmett Clark, the fix man on the show. If not for Emmett living here his whole life, what you gonna see when he exists? Now again, he and I were awful good friends for 40 years. So a lot about it he told me. And it's right up over top of the hill. You see it in a brick building. You see the Andy Museum right over top of the hill. Then after you pass the museum and a clump of trees, if you look up to your right, have your camera ready because I can't stop. The cops give you a hard time for that. Right past the trees, you see the statue down there. Then you can't the statue. But the way this thing got started, the show went on TV this summer. That's how it comes to the museum. Original artifacts off the show, like the Andy shirts and badges. Both sets of keys off the set. Both plaques off the courthouse door. The gavel, the telephone, the eagle placement, all those original items are right back up for you to see. You can also see one of Andy's Madlock suits. Otis's suit, Don Knotts salt and pepper suits, Goober's hat, and 2 outfits he wore on show. And don't forget to go downstairs because Barney's girlfriend, Thelma Lou, Betty Lynn's the real name, she got a whole room to herself, and I didn't realize she was that big an actress. Now, she lived with us for 14 years. She died a year before last in her sleep. 95 years old, as sharp as a tack, just went to bed, didn't wake up. That's the way I want to go. But anyway, I didn't know she's that big an actress because she co-starred with Betty Davis and June Bride, Robert Young, and many other big-time actors throughout her lifetime she's in movies with. So don't forget to go downstairs. Now we go top the hill and take a left, and on the right-hand street corner, you're going to see a street corner sign that Jerry Van Dyke may well know. Jerry Van Dyke was on one episode. During the episode, him and Andy steps out of the courthouse and stops, and Andy points to his left, said, Jerry, go down a few blocks to the corner of Haymore and Rockford, be the crossing guard for the school. Now the Rockford part got blown away in the city, ain't never replaced it, but that's the corner sign. Now the reason behind that was, the episode with Jerry in it aired in 1965. In 1965, Andy's mom and daddy was still living over to the right in that little house. So that's where Andy grew up. Here's the story on that. First of all, you notice the first year on that sign was 35. Because if you hadn't thought about it, didn't know Andy was born June 1st, 1926. The first 9 years he was alive, here his mom and dad, technically speaking, I don't know what to call home. But for 9 years, they were able to bounce around Mount Evergreen relatives until finally they were able to buy the house. His dad bought it for 35, so they lived here. And he goes off to college in the mid-40s, and he went to the University of North Carolina and received a degree in music. And while in college, he met his first wife, Barbara. Well, after college, him and Barbara spent the next 3 years in Goldsboro, North Carolina, where he taught school. And after that 3-year stretch, so sometime back, I ran across an old interview Andy made years ago, and he was telling a story about leaving school. He said the last year he taught school, he went up to the principal and turned his notice in. So he told the principal, said, I'm gonna take my little comedy act and go across the nation and make a living. He said, that then I'm going well. He said the principal stood down and chewed him out for about 5 minutes. He says, now Andy, you know good and well that's not a proper way to make a living. But we all know Andy made the guy you could work. 66 year on that sign is the year that Andy flew his mom and dad to Hollywood. That's where they eventually passed away and were buried. And Andy called back at that very same year to sell it. And it sold, and it stayed in the private sector for the early 2000s. Back then, there's a guy by the name of Zach Blackman who owned the franchise for the local magazine. He bought it, and he's practically kept that thing booked up your own like a bed and breakfast. And all I can tell you is it's very, I mean, very difficult to get. It's months, if not maybe years down the road before you can reserve it. Unless you're the most fortunate one. And every once in a while, somebody comes and says, we just got it 2 months ago. I said, you better count your sweet potatoes. I said, that don't happen. And the last one that got it, a couple that just pulled out right there, they took it for Texas. Got a Pennsylvania tag on it, but they got it. How long? It's about 5 or 6 months. Then a couple weeks ago, there was one that got it back in February. So you ain't gonna get it very quick. It's just well sought out. You're not gonna call them up today and say, listen, I'm gonna stay in Andy's house tomorrow night. How about booking it? You're gonna go, ha ha ha. I've had 2 people, 2 guys, 15 years that I said, well, no. I says, say and 58, she said, that's not one word. I used to try to quote it, but you can't. But she said, now, Andy was an only child. He was married 3 times, but he had no children of his own. But now he and his first wife, Barbara, adopted a boy and a girl named Dixie and named Sam. Unfortunately, Sam passed away in 1996 from alcohol poisoning. But now Dixie grew up to get married, to give Andy 3 grandchildren, lives in Colorado, doing fantastic. Several years ago, they got in touch with her and asked her to come out here during the Mayberry days, which is the last full week of September, and do autographs. And her first response to that was, why? She said, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not some famous actress. Would you like to tell me who in the world in Miami, North Carolina wants my autograph? Anyway, they kept on needling her for a while. She finally reluctantly agreed to come, and when she got here, could not believe what she witnessed. She was not expecting to see the hundreds of people here for the Mayberry days. Hadn't even thought about the fact that everything that took place was to pay honor and tribute to her dad. So that changed the whole way of thinking. So she's been back every year since then, except for one unannounced. And with a friend of hers from South Carolina, Michelle someone, I don't know her last name exactly where she's from. When they showed up on Main Street during the Mayberry days, they were disguised as the Fun Girls Deputy Keeper from Mount Powell. Hello, doll. Hey, Bernie. Now you open that dash right there and you can see a picture of them. Push that button. There you go. Right on top. Now Andy's daughter's in the yellow. That's Dixie Griffiths. She played Skippy. And then the other girl, like I say, from South Carolina, and they're just real good friends. But you add to all that right there, the character actors that come in from around the nation. It's hard to believe. And they make money doing that because they reflectively, look back on the show and do a tremendous job. Mayor Pike and Otis's and stuff like that. It is just one more ton of fun during that week of the Mayberry days. Now here's the 4. Here's the 4 still living off the show. And you've got Eleanor Donahue and his first girlfriend, Eddie Walker. She was here several years ago doing autographs. And then you've got Barbara Eaton. She was on an episode. And she was a manicurist, and all the men loved her and all the women hated her. And then, of course, you got Ron Howard, who played Opie. And also his little brother's on a show named Clint Howard. Now, who was Clint Howard on the Andy Griffiths show? Ron's little brother.
The only show I remember him from was Gentle Ben. I said the only show I can remember him from was Gentle Ben.
Yep. He was on the Andy Griffiths show.
He was on Star Trek too.
He was the little boy who used to walk down the streets. part back here or right over there?
Y'all didn't know that was part of the tour, did you?
Did you see her? She assaulted a peace officer.
Hey,
And that guy parks that doggone car right there. He's one of the drivers, but he pulls it up there and parks. This is sort of overflow. But anyway, yeah, Clint was a little boy carried that peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Ah, okay.
He walked down the street, never said nothing, wearing the cowboy outfit. And he'd go up to the bar and off to the bar and say, "No thanks, Leon." And he's been, so he came the same year that Danny's daughter did, and just like her, he could not believe what he witnessed. And he's come back on several occasions. Without me, I hope y'all enjoyed the ride.
we did.
Got a whole knowledge full and a few laughs. That's the main thing. Have fun. He moved that stupid thing out of the way. We'll pull over there. he just pulls up and gets out and picks that old style pipe badger. I can't stand it. But I got it fixed. I just pulled the hearing aids out. I got my ticket book. I'm gonna write him a ticket.